history starts happening to people.
What do you mean by that?
So some people are in a position where their decisions direct history. And some people, history happens to them. In the 11th hour, literally days before, his guys are just going to go home, and they had every right to. He's going to pull this victory from the jaws of defeat.
Hail Mary.
It very much is. And it just keeps going. Like, he could have settled on that, and it probably would have been just enough to get them through the winter. But he doesn't stop there. Any one of these three things would have been considered, something to remember this man by. But the fact that he just stacked all three of them up in 10 days is borderline unheard of. I usually, subjugate you to history lectures without the benefit of an audience. So
this time we thought we would have an audience.
Yeah,
so,
why not?
On this episode of the Friendly City podcast, we're going to be sitting down with Travis. Travis is a reenactor who takes his craft extremely seriously and is really good at what he does. He travels all up and down the East Coast, reenacting Civil War battles, Revolutionary War battles. Anything that you can reenact, Travis reenacts.
Maybe not everything. I've seen some people doing Greek hoplite and all the way through to Grenada, and I've seen impressions for things that are a bit more recent than what I would choose to do. But yeah, Revolutionary War and Civil War are the two biggest ones, and those are the two things that I've participated the most in.
Yeah. He also works at the Frontier Culture Museum, where he also volunteers.
I volunteer at the Frontier Culture Museum, and I volunteer from time to time at Colonial Williamsburg, and I've volunteered at numerous museums all up and down the East Coast.
Yeah. So in preparation for America's 250th anniversary, we're having Travis on, and we're going to be talking about the Founding Fathers, America. If you stick around to the end, we're going to go through a list of all the qualities that make founders great through the lens of the Founding Fathers. So thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Friendly City podcast. So let's get into it. What is something that happened in 1776 you wish more people knew?
So one thing I really wish people understood is that America at the time, the colonies, was not a monolith. It was not a single collective group of people with the same culture and ideas and ideals. It was a number of people. And John Adams said that America was a nation of thirds. There was a third in the Revolution who fought for the Patriots. There was a third who fought for King George and the crown. And there was a third that just could not be bothered. They didn't want anything to do with either sides.
I didn't know that.
A lot of people don't. It's why I wish more people knew about it. And we have this kind of rose-tinted view of the American Revolution. It is our founding myth, really, in so many ways. It is what gives us or began our character, our ideals. But we tend to forget that not everyone was all on board on this. With any revolution, there are multiple sides. And America was no different. And when I started doing reenacting, actually one of the first things I did for Revolutionary War was portraying Virginia militia who fought for King George. So it's something a lot of people don't know, and I wish more did. I think there's also some things that kind of part of the legend and the myth of the revolution I wish some more people knew about. So we have this idea that during the American Revolution, the British stood out in fields in their red coats, shoulder to shoulder, and the crafty, wily Americans hid behind trees and sniped with rifles. And that did happen from time to time, and there's several battles where that was important. But that's not how America won the American Revolution. There's two things that I think were really crucial in that. One was learning and adapting to European military tactics. We didn't win by hiding behind a tree. We won by standing shoulder to shoulder in a field with British standing shoulder to shoulder, trading volleys, and beating them at their own game. The other thing that I think really contributed to it, and you really can't say America would exist today, I don't think, without them, is European involvement. It's not even just France. The Netherlands, Spain, they all had parts to play in the American Revolution.
Really?
Most of the gunpowder that Americans fired was not made in America. America was a colony, which means they did not produce things, manufactured products.
Mm-hmm.
There are some things like the American rifle. That was a uniquely American manufacture. But it's small batch, highly skilled craftsmen making that. Gunpowder, muskets, cannons, those were things that America really tried hard to make during the American Revolution. But we just didn't have the capability to do that, especially not in the middle of a war zone effectively. Most of the guns and equipment that are used are brought in from Europe. The French musket becomes the founding pattern of American firearms for the next 50, 60 years after the American Revolution. It's just copies of that gun. Scores of Spanish muskets, Dutch muskets. The coat I'm wearing is styled kind of on what's called a lottery coat. It's a coat made in France, and they were sent over in vast quantities to America. And they didn't have enough to equip the entire army, so there was a lottery to see who gets them. So it's that European involvement that, we weren't on our own. We started on our own, but we didn't end on our own. It was a group effort.
How did Europe get involved? I know Ben Franklin played a part, which you were telling me about earlier today, which was fascinating to hear. But how did the rest of it, how did Spain, how did the Netherlands get involved?
So that kind of goes back to Europe.
Do they all just want to see England fail?
I mean, that's a really big part of it.
Yeah.
This is not too long after the 7 Years' War, or what we would call the French and Indian War.
Mm-hmm.
And the entirety of Europe just goes up in flames, basically, in this not only continental, but global conflict. And England and Great Britain really come out as the big winners of that war. They gained the most land. They gained the most prestige. They gained a lot of debt, but they gained so much. And a lot of Europe would be pretty happy seeing Britain taken down a peg.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you see this throughout history where you have these powers who really don't like each other. And as soon as something kicks up in their backyard, they are more than willing to funnel guns and money into that conflict just to see their adversary brought down in power or brought down on the world stage. And it's no different in the last quarter of the 18th century. Ben Franklin and John Adams are two of the delegates that are kind of designated by the Continental Congress to go to Europe to seek French intervention.
Was it only French intervention?
For them, it was primarily French intervention. There was also delegates going to, I believe there were delegates going to the Netherlands, to Spain. Hmm. And really what they did is these were British colonists up to basically July 1776. Mm-hmm. They knew Britain's standing in the world, and they knew their relationships with other countries. In fact, they had some pretty big misgivings about allying with Catholic nations like France and Spain at the time, but they also knew these are the biggest dogs, in continental Europe. They are going to do some massive damage if you can get them in on your side. And they will be a massive help in just arms and material and money and eventually troops, if you can get them on your side. But it's one thing to accidentally ship 100,000 muskets to a rebelling colony. It's a completely different thing to send an entire army by fleet across an ocean when your adversary is considered the greatest naval power of the age.
Mm-hmm.
It is a big deal. And a lot of these countries, just like Britain, also were saddled with debt from the 7 Years' War. So it was a tall order. The French really didn't like the British, but you had to be very persuasive to get them to cross over that. And Franklin and Adams are probably the two most famous examples of European diplomats. Partly just because they have a real kind of buddy cop situation going on.
Mm-hmm. Good cop, bad cop.
Yeah, it really is. And in fact, you can read articles online and they will describe them as good cop, bad cop. And Franklin has this showboaty personality. He is the life of the party. He is a force of charisma. When he shows up to courts, he's wearing, a frontier costume, essentially. This guy's a printer from one of the largest cities in North America at the time.
Yeah.
He is a city boy, but he knows it will play up if he wears, a coonskin cap. And
are these courts in France?
Courts in France.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
With, all of the pomp and circumstance of the Palace of Versailles. And, this is a mere, less than 20 years before the downfall of the French monarchy.
So it's in its heyday.
Yeah, it is peak French
Versailles.
royal court.
Yeah, peak Versailles, and he shows up in a coon hat.
He was a people person. He knew what would play well. And he was cultivating this kind of persona. And he was a brilliant man. He was a political philosopher in his own right, an inventor, real polymath. But he was playing that side of things, showing up and rubbing elbows at parties, planning, a word here, a word there in the middle of a soiree. John Adams was a very task driven. He was
Hold on, really quick. What is a soiree?
Like a dance party.
Okay.
John Adams comes from a Puritan family, and is not exactly Puritan, but he's pretty strict.
I can already imagine the conflict.
Yeah. And he's the straight laced. It's a lot like Tommy Boy. That dynamic that shows up is, those two.
Yeah.
You've got the straight laced, very task driven, very, doesn't like how Ben Franklin's spending all of his time at parties and,
it's like, I'm going to get some work done.
Yeah. He wants results and he wants them now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's them playing off each other that I think makes that relationship so successful.
Now, was it someone's decision to send them both, or did they both decide to go, or how did that come about?
It was Congress's. Now, I couldn't tell you exactly if, they had, seeded the idea, said, hey, I want to go do this thing. But
it's kind of a genius strategy to send them both.
Yeah. And, especially Franklin, this wasn't new to him. Before the American Revolution, he serves a period of time as a representative of the colonies in King George's court. In fact, before the American Revolution, they start grilling Franklin because, rebellion starts looking more and more like it's on the horizon. So they start grilling him, if we do this, will there be a rebellion? If we send troops, will they fight?
Mm-hmm.
And
what was he saying?
Franklin kind of famously says that, today, and this is before Lexington and Concord, or it's just before or just after that time, but he says, it would have been just before this time. He says, we aren't rebelling now or calling for independence or anything like that. But if you send armed troops to occupy our lands, you will create rebels. And it kind of is true because things start rapidly speeding up the more British soldiers that arrive on American soil.
Yeah, it makes the problem way more real.
It absolutely does.
When the enemy shows up at your doorstep.
Because there's periods of time, we think in our lore, we know that there's the Boston Massacre and then the Boston Tea Party. And then it's basically boom, boom, Lexington and Concord. Shot heard round the world. And it's just that direct linear thing. There are years separating those incidents, especially the Boston Massacre. And there's this lull between that happening and the beginning of the American Revolution where you have firebrands like Samuel Adams, who's having a hard time. He's having to really work at reminding people, hey, no, you don't like the British. Keep at it. Keep not liking them. Keep protesting. It was a hard thing to keep up because things kind of settled back
died down. Everything goes back to normal. Nobody wants the war.
Status quo. But then you start seeing things like the Tea Act kind of really kicks off a lot of resentment in the Americas.
And is that what caused the Boston Tea Party?
That's directly what causes the Boston Tea Party.
And you told me something interesting about the Boston Tea Party just yesterday.
So we think like, they were upset because, now they're getting these intolerable taxes. And there had been a Stamp Act. I need to double check this. I believe that most of that gets removed because there was a big upset about it. But it kind of goes on and on and on. The East India Company, the main exporter of tea for Britain, starts having some financial problems.
Best company ever made.
Best company ever made. Star of a couple Pirates of the Caribbean movies. But
dude, what a company though. What a company.
What a run. They had standing army. That company had standing armies that were bigger than some European standing armies. Wild. Anyways.
As a founder, one day I hope to achieve
that
kind of status.
I want my own standing army, waging wars on foreign soil with my own corporate army.
All for my interest and benefit.
Yeah, all for the tea. But they were having some financial problems, so the Crown kind of passes this act, which does, there is a tax involved, but even with the tax, the legal tea from the East India Company is cheaper than the smuggled tea that Americans were drinking a lot of at the time. Basically, you could buy, before the Tea Act, you could buy expensive British tea, or some guy could sneak a shipment in, and you could buy really cheap Dutch tea. Well, everyone was, drinking the Dutch tea. So to get the Americans to start drinking the English tea, Tea Act, it's taxed, but with taxes, it's cheaper than the Dutch tea. But that still upsets Americans. One, because debatably, obviously the Patriots would say they are supposed to be represented. That is something part of the British government and kind of the common English rule of law at the time. You are not supposed to be taxed without direct representation in Parliament.
Wasn't Ben Franklin representing though?
Not as a voting member. He was just kind of, it's kind of like how Puerto Rico has a representative in Congress. They speak for Puerto Rico, but they don't really have a vote in the same way. Or rogue states like, say, Taiwan. They have, rogue states do have representatives in the UN. They just aren't real representative, or well, I wouldn't say not real, but they aren't voting members.
I see.
So you got someone who says something, but they also don't have any real power.
End, yeah.
So there was that argument about the tax, but kind of also not insignificant part of it. You have people like Samuel Adams, who have a significant investment and interest in the smuggled Dutch tea, and now that revenue stream got cut off. You also have other founding fathers who had very real financial interest in keeping people drinking that Dutch tea. So, little self-serving, probably, but there's still that, idealism that they bring to the table. Yes, they may have a vested interest in this, but they also have an ideological interest in independence and representation. Well, at the time, representation. That's what they wanted. They still saw themselves as British citizens for the most part. They still saw themselves as loyal to the crown. You even read some documents, some letters that are sent to the crown, and it's kind of saying, hey, King George, we don't blame you for this, all the stuff that's happening, the coercive acts, the tea acts, and things like that. You're still a good guy. You're still our king. It's your people who are whispering in your ear, your ministers. They're bad guys. You need to stop listening to them.
To be fair, though, if I was writing a letter to the king, I'd be like, your grace, your majesty, you are exquisite in all your glory. But these people. And,
before the declaration, it does have a little bit of that sense to it. Like, you're still a cool guy, George.
It'd be so much cooler, though.
Yeah, it would be way cooler if you could just, do a little bit of this for us. Give us some representation. Stop listening to these dudes. They're telling you bad stuff.
And then after the declaration,
King George really does not like that.
Doesn't like what?
That letter.
Oh,
those kind of
suggestions.
Yeah, he really gets mad about that.
How does he react?
It's, kind of some of this kind of happens over time, but you end up, and the Boston Tea Party really contributes to this. You start seeing things like the coercive acts. That's when they start sending those letters. And I'd have to double check, but I mean, armies get sent. So yeah, not super thrilled about the whole thing. Yeah, they have a fairly large expeditionary force. And, by the time the American Revolution kicks off, there are more British soldiers in Boston than citizens.
Whoa.
Need to double check that, Matt.
That's okay.
Just to make sure.
Just say it from here on out. Just say everything as if it's a cold, hard fact.
Oh. Yeah.
With authority. And then
if you think you know better, leave a comment.
There you go. But no, can you imagine your colonies writing you being like,
yeah, it's
being like, please just do this better for us, or like trying to tell you what to do. Bro, I'm King George.
Yeah, he has a divine mandate, and King George wasn't a crazy guy at the time. And this is another thing that people really don't understand. That you think of King George as this, like, crazy, insane person, ruling with an iron fist from the throne. And he, especially at this time, he's not. He's an extremely intelligent man, an diligent man. He's studies broadly. He reads a lot. He's his own secretary. And when he sends correspondence, he writes the exact time when he sends it on every letter, basically.
Wow.
He's not crazy at this point. He kind of does become crazy later in life.
How crazy does he get?
That's Napoleonic stuff. But yeah, everyone pretty much agrees this guy, he was off his rocker, but he was also old by that time. But he's considered like a fairly attractive figure as far as monarchies go. He's fairly well respected. Yeah, he just really thinks that the colonies are overstepping by sending this. So yeah, he reacts a bit heavy-handed.
Did most colonies send letters to the king, or was America special in that?
America's kind of unique in that. Now there had been other colonies that voiced opinions. Jamaica was one. They sent some kind of requests, but they're a bit more soft about it.
Yeah, we're out here demanding stuff.
we definitely take it to the next step. But for Britain, it's not just the 13 colonies. That's not the extent of the British Empire.
Mm-hmm.
They're already at the whole the sun never sets on the British Empire kind of thing.
Okay.
They have massive holdings in India, and
Africa.
Yeah, and really what's key is the Indian and Caribbean colonies. So after the 7 Years' War, they gained additional colonies in the Caribbean and India, and especially, people think a lot about Canada. Great, cool, really only care about two of those, and that's the Caribbean islands. That is the money maker, the Sugar Islands, and India, tea. While between Georgia and Massachusetts and the New England colonies, that is the most population dense, especially for kind of European descendant colonists.
How did it become that way? Like, why did everyone start coming to America or to the colonies at this point?
Going to have to wind back a few hundred years for that, or 150 or so for that one.
High level, just really quick.
It varies. So Virginia, the first colony, is the first permanently settled colony.
First and best colony.
Number one, baby.
Best state.
That is founded for basically purely financial and prestige reasons.
Tobacco. No?
It eventually ends up being tobacco.
Okay.
But they send John Smith and, that whole crew over here.
Yeah, I saw Pocahontas.
Yeah, exactly. you got to get through all of that before you get to the John Rolfe and the tobacco thing.
Okay.
That's not why they showed up, but it quickly became why Virginia, especially by the time of the American Revolution, was the most profitable and populous state in the entire colonies.
Okay.
Then you have other colonies like the Massachusetts Bay colony, which ends up being Massachusetts and kind of the New England settlements. That is more based on religious
Puritans,
grounds. They basically they thought everyone in Europe wasn't being Christian enough.
Not doing it right.
So they were going to take their Bibles and go be Christian somewhere else.
Okay.
And that's how you get the Massachusetts Bay colony. Everything else, it's kind of a mixed bag between. You see some other ones. Pennsylvania is very heavily influenced by the Quakers. Maryland, for a time, is heavily influenced by Catholics. It's initially started as a settlement for Catholics. But it's a mixed bag. In American schools, they usually teach you God, gold, and glory are the reasons why colonialism exists. And you pretty much see that in various amounts throughout all of the colonies. But, if we even think about the 13 colonies in North America, that's still not an exhaustive list. Spain still owns Florida. New Hampshire, it's there. And Vermont, or is it New Hampshire or Vermont? One of the two. They're the same place. They're the same one. I've never seen them in the same room together. They are part of the 13 colonies, but you see Ethan Allen and the Green Mountain Boys come from there. They're doing Revolutionary War stuff. They don't get counted. There's more reasons. I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head. You see Canada. Canada is really not on board with the whole revolution thing, which everyone thought was wild because up to like 15 years before, it's a French colony. It's only the French and Indian War when it becomes British. So it's full of Catholics and French, and they thought, oh, they aren't going to like these dudes. Well, turns out they kind of, I guess, did. And yeah, especially the Sugar Islands. That's what the moneymaker was. North America was kind of a sideshow in terms of especially colonial profitability. Yeah, it had the population, didn't have the profits.
I see. Okay. So just to bring it back, these colonies that are most densely populated are writing the king like it's no one's business, right? Because they're writing the most. And the king's not having it.
Yeah.
So what happens next?
Well, you start seeing just history starts happening to people.
What do you mean by that?
So some people are in a position where their decisions direct history, and some people, history happens to them. You have your George Washingtons, your Thomas Jeffersons, your Paynes, your Henrys, your Adams. They start setting the gears in motion, driving fervor amongst the populace. You start seeing them having influence on others. You start seeing history happening to people. Taxmen getting just tarred and feathered. They don't really have any power, but they are the representative of the king. They get to take a bath in boiling pitch. And history just kind of, the gears start turning, and it starts becoming less and less something that the British have any capability to stop. You start seeing things like the Committee of Safety popping up all over the colonies. And what that is, it basically leads to Minutemen. If you think citizen soldiers gathering together, you train a little bit, that's Committee of Safeties. But it was somewhat removed from Crown authority. And then you start seeing the British in Boston having less and less influence in the countryside. You see this across the colonies. A lot of the governors start retreating to their capitals, which are on the ocean. Lord Dunmore of Virginia starts, backing his influence into Williamsburg. Just like the Massachusetts government starts backing into Boston. And the British have less and less control over what happens outside the city limits, outside the furthest picket from the main city that they're in. And then you start seeing things like the British starting to be worried about the population's ability to revolt. So you start seeing certain things kind of happening simultaneously. In Virginia, it's called the Gunpowder Incident, where there's a big store of gunpowder in a big magazine in Williamsburg. And during the night, Lord Dunmore, not personally, but his people, they take all the powder out, and everyone loses their collective minds. In Massachusetts, you start seeing expeditions to go try to find military stores. One column decides on one April morning to go to the Community Green in Lexington. And then you hear a shot, and then everything just starts going. It becomes unstoppable.
So that was the official start of the Revolutionary War, or
yeah,
that's what I learned in elementary school.
If you are going to put an exact moment in time, if you are going to assign a date to the start of an American Revolution, it is when whoever, and we don't know who, pulls the trigger, or that first gun goes off on the green in Lexington.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm also kind of personally, that's a little too clean for me, because, okay, someone had to be there. Two people had to be there at least. One guy who wasn't happy about the other guy being there, and vice versa. Okay, why were those two guys there? And then you start going back and back and back. And, you can go all the way to the French and Indian War, where the cogs start turning, even if people can't see it at the time. That's when it almost becomes inevitable.
So for someone who doesn't know the full course of the war, just give me a high level overview. It's been a long time since I learned this stuff.
Yeah. Bunch of dudes in Massachusetts aren't happy about the British. They start shooting at them. They lock them in Boston. Dude from Virginia shows up, takes over, forms them into an army.
Who's this dude?
Washington.
Okay.
Another guy comes in and steals some guns from a British fort, shows up, gets the British to leave Boston. Everyone's having a good time. They go and Washington tries to go take New York, doesn't have a good time. Or he goes to New York, sets up shop. The British kick him out of New York. Everyone's having a bad time. A bunch of people go up to Canada thinking that's a great idea. Also, no one has a great time. Then there's some indecision about who actually owns Philadelphia. Then there's a couple of battles. The French show up. There's some more battles in the South. And then Cornwallis gets stuck in Yorktown.
That's it.
There's a lot that happens in between that, but it's a long war.
How long? 8 years?
8 years. Now, not all of it's fighting, and there are periods of intense conflict. There's also periods of everyone's just sitting around, just waiting for someone else to do something. It's a long way between England and America, especially at the time. But you can kind of break it down, and a lot of people will, and it's a bit simplistic, but there's the northern part of the war, the beginning. That's where you have your Lexington and Concord, your battles around New York, where George Washington, again, having a categorically unfun time. You get your first expedition into Canada, which is going to set a long precedent for Americans having a bad time doing expeditions into Canada. Then it transitions into the middle colonies. So mostly around New Jersey and Pennsylvania. Then you see a transition to the southern colonies, conflicts in South Carolina and North Carolina and Georgia, before kind of ending in Yorktown. But it's a long war. People have written whole volumes of work about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things that's really hard to condense down into a 2-sentence. This is the American Revolution.
Got it. I thought you did a really good job, though.
Yeah. Some guys have a great time. Some guys have a bad time. It's a mixed bag. And that's kind of nature of the war at the time. So one thing, the British commander, he's getting his orders from London. Well, it takes weeks and weeks and weeks for a ship to go from North America to London. And then it takes weeks and weeks and weeks to go from London back to North America. So by the time the commander on the ground tells London what's going on, the orders they're giving are oftentimes completely out of touch with the reality on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So that lag is incredibly difficult for them to overcome. And during this time, you are just bound by certain seasons. One, all of your ships, they're controlled by the weather. That you don't just get to choose, I'm going to go, 20 miles today, this direction. It's if the wind is right, I can make my ship go 20 miles in this direction. And it's not, I can get in a truck and, drive 60 kilometers to the next capital and, just do a drive-by while we're going. It's, I'm going to take my guys 60 miles and it's going to take me like 4 days if I'm being fast about it. It's just a order of magnitude different than what we think of in modern terms of conflict. So you are very much beholden to the season. So for most of these armies, with very few exceptions, between about October and November and about March and April, that's considered, time out. That's winter quarters. That's everyone just is like it's going to suck way too much to try to do anything right now. We're going to lose too many guys to disease. We're just going to sit in some cabins and just kind of chill out for a while.
Yeah. So is that what was happening right before Trenton?
Yeah. So one of, if we're talking 1776, which this is the 250th anniversary of, and really one of the first big turning points of the American Revolution is sometimes called the 10 Crucial Days, but the Battle of Trenton, and thrown in there, the Battle of Princeton. So it is basically Christmas, and the British have definitely decided we just bodied Washington's army really hard for just the whole previous year. In the summer, Washington has 25,000 men on paper under his command. By this point, he has effectively on the field less than a quarter of that.
And conscriptions are going down.
Yeah, people's terms of service. The American army was constantly plagued by enlistment periods. These guys had signed up early on. They'd signed up for a 1-year enlistment for a lot of them. Mm-hmm. And that 1 year was about to expire. So the majority of his army is about to just, okay, I'm about to punch out. It's 5 o'clock. I've got to go home. I don't want to be here anymore. And really, who can blame them? The army's dying of dysentery and disease, and they just got absolutely wrecked in New York for months previously. So who wants to kind of saddle their horse to, a sinking ship? Make some analogies there, but
I got it though.
So it's a bad time. All the British officers and the German officers, they're having a great time. They're like, oh, we're just going to, run the clock out on this one. His armies, if they don't die of the cold, they're just going to get tired and go home. So we just got to sit here. So they're mostly in New Jersey. They're a bit spread out. Armies at the time, you don't want them all sitting in the same spot, because the more people together, the more likely everyone dies of sickness. It's a very Oregon Trail situation. Someone's getting cholera, someone's getting dysentery.
What a good game.
Right. This peak childhood memories.
All my school computers had
it. Computer lab, great time. So anyways, right on the water, there is this group of Hessians. It's about 1,500 of them. So these are German soldiers from a German principality who have, their prince has signed them up to basically fight on behalf of King George. They're sitting right on the edge of the Delaware, the small town in New Jersey called Trenton. Washington's trying desperately to keep these guys together and is basically begging them to, just one last push, one last effort. The watchword for the night that he's going to launch his crossing, it's the kind of password you would give if you're coming up on a century, a challenge and pass. It's victory or death. Like, he knows this is it. Mm-hmm. If we don't win here, I don't have an army. If I don't have an army, the revolution pretty much is dead. So he takes his guys across a frozen river. And
how many guys?
It's everyone he can. He takes them and puts them in 3 columns, all roughly about the same size, and approaches Trenton from 3 directions. So these guys are going to surround Trenton, and it's Christmas. Who in their right mind in the middle of a snowstorm? It is snowing. Going to attack a garrison town on Christmas. It would be very unsportsmanlike.
You did him dirty.
Yeah, he did. He rolls up and very quickly and very effectively just takes the whole town. Takes most of them as prisoner, most of the Hessians. A couple get away. Kills a few of them, kills their commander, not Washington directly, but his guys. And it's a massive W. Like, this is the biggest W that they've seen in a hot minute. And it's galvanizing for a lot of these guys.
Dude,
Like,
there's just the image of him crossing the Delaware. I don't know much about the Revolution, but I know the image of him crossing the Delaware that has been immortalized forever. This aura farming founder that is just
this guy. He's just like, I mean, there's no better way to say it. This dude's ore farming. Like, he's just rolling up there.
But he was desperate too. He was desperate at that time.
Well, and I think this is another reason why we like this story. It is the ultimate underdog story. He has 6,000 dudes versus the Hessians 1,500. So you're like, oh, this is not exactly, he's got more dudes. But there are accounts where you could track his army's movement because of the blood in the snow, because the guys didn't have shoes and they were marching in snow in bare feet. And this incredible privation. These are not professional soldiers, not to the quality of these lifelong German soldiers. And, you know, professional soldiers at the time, it's very much not quite the same thing as a professional soldier today. But it was clear the Americans did not match the quality soldier for soldier in military skill of these Europeans.
Mm-hmm.
But still, in the 11th hour, literally days before, his guys are just going to go home, and they had every right to. He's going to pull this victory from the jaws of defeat.
Hail Mary.
It very much is. And it just keeps going. Like, he could have settled on that, and it probably would have been just enough to get them through the winter.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't stop there. So some of those Hessians get away. They tell the next garrison town over. So they start sending a column towards Washington. They think they're going to have an engagement around this fortified bridge. Well, Washington's like, I don't really know if I want to have a stand-up. Like, this is a pretty good setup, but I've also had some pretty good setups in the past. That didn't really work out well for me.
Mm-hmm.
So he has his guys just light these massive bonfires and, really play up the numbers and the guys that are there. And then he just slips across back over to the Pennsylvania side of the Delaware. So the British come in the morning. They're like, oh, well, we're going to attack in the morning when we're all fresh. They come charging across the bridge and just no one's there. Completely
Bamboozled.
dupes him again. Then he crosses the Delaware a third time, and he attacks behind their lines essentially at Princeton. And this is like college Princeton town.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just any one of these three things would have been considered, something to remember this man by.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that he just stacked all three of them up in 10 days is borderline unheard of. And also during a time where traditionally you didn't want to do any military campaigns because it was just such a tax on your guys. They were so likely to die from sickness and disease and have bad morale and just not really have the heart to it. The fact that he is able to persuade his men, his officers, and inspire that loyalty to give that one last little push
Mm-hmm.
and to keep pushing, that is just something incredible on his part.
Yeah, and we were talking about it earlier today when I was asking you who's your favorite founding father and who you think was the most influential, and you said George Washington. And
I mean,
go ahead.
He's the one I think I find myself drawn to the most.
What draws you to him?
He is a man that transcends his time. He's a man of his time, but what he brings to the table, there is still something to admire about him. George Washington was not a saint. He was not an infallible man. There are things that aren't great on his record. I mean, at the time, he owned over 180 people, and he's fighting for liberty. That's a little problematic from a modern lens. He broke up families. He's writing to his brother. He actually writes to his brother before Trenton. And there are some matters where he is addressing running his plantation of Mount Vernon.
Mhm.
Throughout the war, he almost micromanages Mount Vernon. And, during these desperate times, he's still breaking up families by selling people to, husbands sold or leased to other people, split from their wife and children. That's not great. He orders punitive expeditions against native tribes. There is some more to unpack there, but that's not what we would consider an ideal to aspire to. Sending soldiers to go burn and destroy the homes and livelihoods of other people, regardless if we're having conflict with them or not. We generally think the objective is to not kill the populace. It's to fight in, other soldiers. He did not have quite the same qualms about that. All of that said, though, he is a man who is able to inspire a devotion and be this, or a farm. He's almost unanimously asked by Congress to go be the commander of the American Revolution at the very beginning. Now, he does show up to Congress multiple days in a military uniform. And so it's like, oh, what do you mean? I guess if you want me to, the only guy who shows up in an actual uniform to Congress, how did he get voted for this? Who knows? He does that, but also so much of what we think, the chief executive, he could have so easily been, if not a dictator, a monarch. There were multiple people who wanted him to be that. Right before Trenton, there are founding fathers who want him to have dictatorial powers granted to him, the supreme, unquestioned executive. He didn't want that.
It's kind of shocking. It's kind of shocking that he didn't.
It is so shocking. When he becomes president, he is unanimously elected as the president for the first term. I believe on the second term too. The whole country, every other founding father usually had beef with some other founding father, and there were things that they didn't like about Washington. But everyone agreed, this is our dude. This is the guy who is going to make America. And he does. Things like the 2-term limit until FDR, well over 100 years later, every president would serve up to 2 terms and then leave. And that's because he did not want to be that dictator. And so much of what we think of as the office of the president, he is one of the most influential people to set those unwritten rules about how the president is supposed to work. Some of those do get codified, and there's other people who bring something to the table. Your Lincolns, your FDRs, who bring something to the table of what it means to be the president. But Washington is still kind of the guy for that.
Yeah.
Again, we got to take these people with their good and the bad.
Yeah.
We can't put him on a marble statue and forget these things. But he gave America this ideal to pursue, this idea that we can be better. We may fail during our lifetimes, and in some ways, Washington did. He owned people to the day he died. He failed in that regards to liberty, but he gave us something to aspire to be better. I think so many of the founders, that's why they transcend their time. There are some people who don't. I was showing you a quote earlier today. It's from the biography about a man called George Rogers Clark. And it said, paraphrasing, but some people can transcend the prejudice, the ignorance, the flaws of their time. Your Franklins, your Lincolns, your FDRs, I would argue Washington as well.
Jefferson too, or no?
I think so. There is a lot about Jefferson that we can be critical of. Again, he owned people. Just full stop. I think we all agree it's not super cool to own people anymore, to treat them as property. People aren't property. They are, a living being. They have a soul. We shouldn't own that. We shouldn't have that control. I think most of the world would agree on that. He did not. Or if he didn't agree with it, he didn't agree with it so much that he actually did anything meaningful to not own people. Mm-hmm. He also, in a letter to George Rogers Clark during the American Revolution, says if war is to be made against the Indians, again, I'm paraphrasing a bit, they should be either exterminated or made to move west of the Mississippi. He openly says exterminate these people or kick them out. I think, again, we would generally agree that's not a great thing to do. But he also gives us the words life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, which is such an aspirational goal. Again, he does take that from other writers, but he still gives us this ideal to strive towards. He is incredibly influential in our founding documents, our Declaration, our Constitution. You have a hard time separating him from those. But yeah, I think almost all of our founding fathers, there is something about them where if a modern person had that as part of them, we wouldn't be okay with it. Mm-hmm. And I don't think just because they were men of their time, we should be entirely okay with them demonstrating those behaviors. But that doesn't mean that, again, they can't transcend those flaws. Mm-hmm. I don't think we should ever put people on a marble plinth. People are not perfect by definition. But but there are things that we can absolutely look up to these people for.
Okay, so what are these qualities that make a great founder, and how many of them are there?
Well, actually, I brought a list of 3 of them. And in my opinion, this is what sets them apart. These are the 3 qualities of great founders.
Okay.
Our first one, aspirational. So what I mean by that is that what they brought to the table gave something people could strive for. And we see this in the Constitution, that they had an understanding that it wasn't, we see this in the Constitution, that they had an understanding what they were doing was not the end all be all in order to form a more perfect union, not a perfect union, a more perfect union. They gave us the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness.
These ideas were just so aspirational.
It's the idea that we can all be better. We can be better than we were yesterday. We can be better the next generation. And it's something to strive towards, a sense of progress.
Yeah. And I think founders just in general have this quality where they're able to inspire people to be something greater, to push people to, like what George Washington would do whenever there was a dire moment. They were able to create inspiration and aspiration and instill aspiration into people the way that Steve Jobs did.
They give that vision to their people.
Yeah, when no one else believes.
Exactly.
Sometimes just talking about it and saying things isn't enough. Sometimes you have to cross the Delaware in the middle of a
Sometimes you gotta
snowstorm
cross the
and
Delaware.
stack 3 doves on top of each other like it's
Yeah.
no one's business to inspire. And that's one thing that founders do. Like, not only are their ideas aspirational, their actions are too.
Exactly. And it's not something that, yes, they have that vision, that dream, but it's their ability to also
Transfer it.
Exactly.
It's one thing to have it. It's another thing to give everyone that same thing.
To see what that possibility could end up being.
Yeah. Are there any other founding fathers that really embody this principle?
I think this is going to be your classics, your Jeffersons, your Monroes, your Washingtons. These are the guys who kind of either give the vision to the people, or they hold everyone together for long enough where they just don't lose. They're able to just inspire that sense of purpose in their army, their commonwealth, their colony, their state, what have you. It's being able to share that. See, this really also in like your Patrick Henrys, your Thomas Paine's. His book Common Sense is really an appeal to aspirations in some ways. It was the most sold book in America per capita.
Really?
Yeah, 500,000 copies at a time when there weren't 300 million people in the colonies at the time.
Yeah.
It was a big deal. Washington had, encouraged his troops to read it. You have these great writers and thinkers. These guys had a lot of things going for them. One, they were all well read. They were consumers of other great thinkers.
They were philosophizing.
Exactly. They had the time to be philosophers. This is some peak Age of Enlightenment stuff going.
Mm-hmm.
So they had that window to do that. They also had a kind of a sense of entitlement. They saw themselves as British citizens, and they saw what was happening to them as not living up to the promise that being a British citizen was at this time. So, one of the next things I think is a quality of a great founder is determined. It's not giving up when the going gets tough. So many of the founding fathers, they found themselves at times in such adversity that a lesser person, I probably wouldn't have been able to weather that storm. You look at Washington in, the fall and winter of 76, everything is falling around him. He starts kind of making plans for his papers to be removed from Mount Vernon. It is desperate. But Washington also understood his objective was not necessarily to win. It was to not lose. And you have to keep focused on that. If you lose your way on that path, it's kind of game over. It takes an immense amount of willpower to keep going when you're suffering through Valley Forge, when you're seeing defeat after defeat, when there are people trying to take your job. Again, he was pretty much unanimously popular, but there were people who were dissenting.
Who was trying to take his job?
One of the most famous cases is Charles Lee. He was a British officer who, before the American Revolution, arrives in North America and sides with the Patriots before the Revolution even kicks off. He's one of the senior commanders of Washington's army, and at the Battle of Monmouth, he's somewhat possibly rightly. It depends on who you're reading about the history or who wrote the history of the situation. Probably commits treason or doesn't perform well so that Washington looks worse because he's basically the next guy on the list to take over the army. And he has people that are kind of nipping at his heels that see opportunity, not a destination.
Mm-hmm.
Is what it feels like to me, at least. But he's able to weather that storm. It takes one moment of weakness, and it all crumbles. You have to not lose sight, not lose focus on what the goal is. You have other people. A lot of the founding fathers see times of adversity. Jefferson, when he's governor of Virginia, has to flee to Stanton because Benedict Arnold and a raiding force are tearing through Virginia to try to capture him. Like things are not great at times for all of these people. And it's their ability to keep their eye on the prize, essentially. No one likes the sports movie of the like team that's like 2 feet taller than the other one and absolutely bodies them for an entire 90 minutes. That's not a fun story.
Yeah. People want to see Miracle on the Ice.
Exactly. They want to see them overcome that adversity. It's something we can aspire to. It's something that we want to see in ourselves, and seeing it play out as not just a fiction, but a thing that actually happened. I think really draws people to these figures. The third quality of a great founder, I think, is being a polymath. So it's not just that Ben Franklin was a great printer. He was also a writer. He was also an inventor.
A showman.
He was well-read and widely read. You look at almost any major figure from this time, either for the crown or for America, and they are not a one-trick pony. They did not just do one thing well. They did a lot of things very well. If you read one thing, if you are so singularly focused and become an expert at that one thing, you lose sight on all of these other aspects, and you can draw on these other aspects to improve what you are focusing on at the time. Most of the founding fathers were philosophers, but also had side gigs. I mean, John Adams was, by all accounts, a great lawyer. George Washington was a surveyor. Thomas Jefferson also invented, and he was a naturalist, so he studied plants and science and animals and just the natural world. All of these people, and I think the truly great ones, had that broad reading that they could draw on, that broad understanding that I think helps them bring out the best aspects of whatever it is they are trying to do at the time. And it's not just reading. I mean, there's so many ways we have now to gain skills. I mean, I can watch a YouTube video and learn how to properly sew an 18th century buttonhole. That's not something I would easily be able to pick up from reading, but it is, picking up skills here and there, learning things. And again, it's not always directly obvious. It's not always transactional what that skill is going to give you. But I think there's something to having that skill. My personal favorite is, I love Jurassic Park, Michael Crichton. That dude was a doctor. He was a scientist, he was an actual, I think, medical doctor. Like, that dude was smart.
Mm-hmm.
And at one period of time, he had the number one TV show, the number one book, and the number one movie in America at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
No one does that anymore.
Yeah.
Like, you aren't going to see some author out here also just absolutely crushing it on a movie screenplay. You aren't going to see someone, writing a screenplay absolutely crushing, directing a TV show. And the fact that he did all three while having a medical license, that's kind of crazy to me.
To end this off, I want to ask you one question.
Mm-hmm.
What are you most excited about for America's 250th birthday?
This summer is the 4th of July. It's the 250th 4th of July. It is the 4th of July for this kind of cycle.
Dude, it's going to be wild. I cannot wait.
The sesquicentennial, I think is the word for it. But anyways, it's going to be massive. I'm going to be in Colonial Williamsburg for their celebration of that. And it is going to be the Commonwealth of Virginia's official kind of 250th anniversary for that. And I've been to a few, both official Commonwealth of Virginia 4th of July celebrations and Colonial Williamsburg 4th of July celebrations. Those were big. Now we're combining them. So it's going to be massive because
it's something big to celebrate.
4th of July.
Yeah.
And then this winter, I will be participating in recreating Trenton and Princeton. I find
no way
that these are really compelling events.
Yeah.
They are doing Washington's Crossing, but they're doing it on Christmas, which is when it was done. I'm not showing up to New Jersey on Christmas. Sorry, I like my family a little too much for that. But I will drive up to New Jersey after Christmas and go and participate in these. It's a great story. It is a Christmas story, so it's right up there with Die Hard. But but it is a little inconvenient when
you have a family in the 21st century.
Yeah, and it just happens to fall on that weekend. So a lot of times reenactments, they'll pick the closest weekend to it because there's a realization that you aren't getting anyone to show up to, Gettysburg on a Monday and a Tuesday or a Wednesday and a Thursday or something like that. No one's doing that.
Yeah.
So they have to be on weekends. So they'll just pick the closest one. Every now and then, it just so happens to be the fun coincidence where it is on the weekend. It does add a little bit of.
Do you feel the spirit of Washington when you're crossing the Delaware?
Right yeah, I did the march one time.
Yeah,
it sucked. I was like, "Yep, that sucks."
Verified.
Yep, verified. Check that one off the list. In fact, every time I do one of these, it's like, yeah, it's so cool, and it's, you feel special about that thing, but you're also like, yeah.
Life really sucked back then.
Yeah. It's like, how many more miles do I have? Oh, great. What a fantastic time. It's 90 degrees out and I've already marched 5 miles. Awesome. But, there's some of that at the time, but there is, certain events where, maybe you're out in the fields, kind of far away from traffic and you don't see modern things. And you do kind of have this almost sense of, it's never going to be the exact same, but you kind of get that ember, that feeling that it feels like you're there.
This
it's
is what
an
they
immersion.
Felt. Yeah.
Yeah. And, that's something a lot of reenactors always look for is that, that feeling. Something that they seek out.
Yeah. So if people want to find you, where's the best place that they can reach you?
So I will be participating in at events at the Frontier Culture Museum and Colonial Williamsburg next. Both of those have their own social media pages.
And I will link those in the bottom and underneath the episode.
Yeah, we can link to the events that they're going to be at. I don't know if I want to. I guess I could throw out my email. I've got my professional one, tldaniel118 tldaniel1189
Perfect. I'll also throw that in the description.
Also, I do have some recommendations I'd be willing to throw out
Yeah,
there.
go ahead. Toss them.
Ken Burns just released a documentary on the American Revolution. Love his stuff. There's a really dope violin riff that he just keeps reusing the whole time. And I know I'm going to hear that at every reenactment from this point on. He is a staple. There is a 3-part novel or 3-part series written by Rick Atkinson. The first part is one of the best written historical nonfictions I think I've ever had the pleasure of going through. It's called The British Are Coming. And, he is such a great writer. He's published his second book. He's still working on the third. Those are kind of my 2 favorite, easily digestible. If you want to know more about the American Revolution and kind of dive headfirst into it, those are my go-tos.